Making the Wasatch region her home for the past 9 years, Anna channels her love of wild places with every breaststroke. I'm thinking of, I think it's because, sorry, I'm gonna start that over again. Anna channels her love for the wild places into every brushstroke. Brushstroke's hard to say. You have to say it fast, brushstroke. Brushstroke? Every stroke of the brush. Maybe that's what I'll say. Every stroke of her brush, which is fine. Okay. Welcome to OverHerd at Deer Valley. I'm your host, Kaylin RIchardson. I am a 2-time Olympian pro skier, and for the past 10 years, I have called Deer Valley my home mountain. Here, I'm going to chat with different leaders, heroes, and characters about what they believe is the Deer Valley difference. Today, we get to explore the profound connection between the mountains and artistic expression. Anna Moore is a Utah-based painter that is inspired by the untamed landscapes of the West. Making the Wasatch region her home for the past 9 years, Anna channels her love of wild places into every stroke of her brush. Anna recently participated in the Burns Reimagined chairlift art project, where upcycled chairs from the retired Burns Chairlift served as canvases for local artists to capture the essence of Deer Valley. Anna's contributions included designs titled Bluebird and Powder Day, reflecting 2 of the best winter weather experiences you can have at Deer Valley. Anna, I've always been so fascinated with people that have the ability to see something beautiful with their eyes or in their mind and then translate it into artwork. When did you know that you had that ability?
Well, I have always been a little artist, and I think kids are the best artists. Everyone is born with that innate ability to create. But I think it all began with my grandmother, who was also an artist. So as a kid, I was always creating with her, and she gave me an example of how to be an adult artist, not just a kid artist. So I always had the example. So keeping with that through line, the inspiration has changed, but the creative process has stayed the same. So I just love sharing the beauty I see in the natural world because it makes it more real to me, and I think it amplifies the experience when we can share that.
And have a little piece of it in your own home sometimes, or something you look at. Was your grandmother also a painter?
Yeah, so she was primarily, she primarily raised, my dad and his brother, but then later in life dedicated herself to the arts. Was in all these different art shows and would travel up and down the East Coast. So it was a really unique experience to have that example of yes, you can be an artist. It's not a made up profession. It's a really viable thing to do. So I'm just really grateful that I had her as an example.
And you say she went up and down the East Coast. So where you deviated a little bit is you chose to go west. You were born in Pennsylvania, and that's where you grew up, I take it. Mm-hmm. What was the catalyst of saying, you know what, I'm going to pack my bags and head across the Mississippi?
To be honest, I wanted to learn how to ski. It was not something we did as a family growing up. It was just something I've always wanted to do. So kind of stubbornly and without a real plan, post-grad, I moved to Winter Park, Colorado, got some skis at a thrift store, and just kind of tomahawked my way down the mountain for a season. But in going west, what I didn't expect was how much I would fall in love with the landscape. I went out just to learn to ski and to kind of have that ski bum life, but what stuck with me was the beauty of the mountains, the smell of the sage, and how each season has its own beauty. So needless to say, I didn't move back to the East, and I can't imagine painting anything else besides the mountains and the desert.
That's amazing, and I can completely relate. So I grew up in the Midwest, no mountains to speak of, and I still remember the first time I really came to big mountains, and it was the Canadian Rockies when I was about 13. I'd been to Colorado quite a bit, so I'd seen the mountains a bit, but there was something about this really seminal memory of where I saw the sunrise coming up over the Canadian Rockies, which are so majestic and so huge. And it just spoke to me, and it felt like coming home, even though I didn't grow up in the mountains. So I completely understand why that really spoke to you. And you said, okay, this is where I'm supposed to be. I've been a fan of your art for years, and it seems like you reach for watercolor most often, but you also do oils and even have dabbled in murals. When it comes to a new idea, how do you conceptualize a project?
Yeah, that's a great question. Right now I'm conceptualizing new projects. Wintertime is kind of the incubation state where you're just developing ideas and there's a lot of studio time because it's cold out. But to bring an idea to fruition and decide what medium and size and scale, it's kind of like a meditative process. And I think for me, I like to translate particular memories and places. So I kind of have a framework of what I'm trying to communicate. So for example, if I want to paint the Wasatch front in a sunset that's really sweeping and wide, I'll probably do a really elongated,
like more panoramic.
Exactly. And then the medium kind of lends itself to that as well. If the colors are really deep and rich, oils are the best. If you want it to be kind of lighthearted and maybe more gestural, watercolor is great for that. But honestly, I'm learning all the time. So a lot of the things I make are experiments, and sometimes they work out. And as the viewer, people don't know when something is an experiment and whether something is your tried and true. So I'm just always trying new things, but always coming back to memory and place and trying to share those two concepts.
I loved how you said that every child is an artist and you learn about mistakes when you're a kid, and there's such a thing as a happy mistake. Has there ever been a time when you're working on a project that's grand in scope and you make a little mistake? Like, is it a happy mistake? Like, how does that work? Like, because just for me, I know that I get so caught up in like a vision where if something goes a little awry, it could potentially derail me. Do you try to embrace those moments because you are working from memory, or how does that sort of play into the final product?
Yeah, I mean, there are mistakes, 100%. And sometimes you just have to take a step back and decide, okay, am I going to try and fix it, or am I going to start over again? And art is just like life. We're all just shooting from the hip, trying to figure it out as we go. But some mistakes are only things you will notice as the artist. And as a skier, I witness someone like you skiing and I see perfection, hips to the ground. It's like something I will never attain as a recreationalist. But so just knowing that the viewer, the audience, is going to see the whole as beautiful and not necessarily be picking apart what you know to be a mistake. So yeah, I guess accepting some of those mistakes, knowing when it's time to start over, but most of the time people don't notice them.
That's so true. And every project, I'm sure, has its own challenges. For instance, with the Burns Reimagined chairlift art project, very different sort of medium because you're using a chairlift as your canvas, which has, I think, pros and cons. How did that sort of play into what you wanted to do, and how did you even figure out what you wanted to paint on the chairlift?
Yeah, well, logistically, the shape of the chair is not your typical 2D canvas, so that was a fun kind of puzzle to solve. But what I wanted to bring to the Burns chair was, again, memory and place. Like, the chairlift itself, for a lot of people, probably holds a lot of memories. When you replace a chairlift, people are probably a little sad, thinking of, oh, I rode that chair when my mom taught me to ski, or that was where I had my first date. So I wanted to kind of lean into the memory and place at Deer Valley especially. So I thought about, what are my favorite memories here? And of course, it's sunny bluebird days with friends, or solo days when the snow is falling and I am just kind of chasing powder through the trees. So those are my core memories here that I then kind of built upon the history of the Burns chair and bringing those two experiences into kind of the physical painting of the chair.
You are a girl after my own heart. I believe that there are friends on powder days. I think there should be, but it is a special day when I just get out on my own. And if there's a little extra snow, it doesn't even have to be a lot. I love that. and I take that home with me. Now, when people see your chairlifts on their best day of the year, potentially, hopefully here at Deer Valley, what do you want them to take home with them when they see your artwork? Maybe they took an Instagram photo, maybe they just smiled as they passed by. What are you hoping you have conveyed in Bluebird and Powder Day?
Yeah, I hope that my chairlifts are kind of a frame to a mountain memory, right? Everyone is experiencing the mountain in their own unique way, but how cool that I get to be a part of their memories. And maybe it's just a moment they can literally sit down and take in the view. Or maybe they notice, hey, that's the view I see. And they kind of have some recognition of the mountains and they feel like they know them a little more. When I moved here, I didn't understand how people could recognize particular mountains. I was like, how can you know who's who? So maybe that's a little gift I can give as an introduction to these mountains and just a quiet moment.
Do you know most of the mountains in the Wasatch at this point, just from looking at them, if I was to show you a picture?
I'm getting pretty good. It's a lot easier to know which mountain is which if you've hiked it or skied it, you know? So to physically traverse the mountains is really good at it helps you memorize them.
Mm-hmm. You know them more intimately.
Yes.
And your artwork helps people appreciate it, for sure. Is that sort of a theme in your artwork? If you had to sort of encapsulate what you're doing, and I know that kind of puts you in a box, and most artists shouldn't be put in a box ever. But if you kind of had to, in a sentence or two, say, this is why I do this, because I want to share this with the world, because you can tell you're a generous, kind human, and you can see it in your artwork with how much you love the mountains, and you want to translate to people that sort of love. But if you kind of had to say, like, you know, like your, I don't know, like your raison d'être, you know, like that, like your reason for it all.
I think my reason for it all is not only sharing the experience I have in the mountains, but in creating the art, it enriches that experience. So it's kind of a cyclical journey of getting out, witnessing the beauty, sharing the beauty, and then amplifying it. Someone else may see the same sunset, but maybe can't paint it. How cool that I get to give the gift that I'm always receiving from the natural world.
Oh, I love that. You said it so perfectly, because you're right. So many people don't have the skill set that you have, but they want to have that memory, and that you can crystallize it in a beautiful piece of artwork is such a gift. And the fact that you grew up in a place where you don't take it for granted. Let's put it that way. Yeah. Kind of going back to my Minnesota roots, so I really can relate to that. And also from Pennsylvania, is that every day you look at these mountains, and I know that I'm still awestruck by them. And when you are, do you ever get kind of like, you have to remain dynamic. Do you ever get sick of the Wasatch Range, or are you still discovering new little corners of it?
Oh my gosh, still discovering. It's funny too, because sometimes I think about myself when I first came here, and I was always taking pictures and was always looking up. And I'm still doing that. 9 years later, I'm still taking the same picture of Guardsman's Pass every time I get up there. So I see the mountains not as something to necessarily be conquered, but they're always there. They're constant, but the light is different. You are different as a person every time you go. So I don't think I'll ever get bored in Utah, especially, but the Wasatch is so vast. Even outside the ski resort boundaries and outside the Wasatch fronts in Park City Mountains, there's so much to explore. So, I think I've only scratched the surface.
You're so right. It's so vast and yet so accessible. Even here at Deer Valley, this is my 10th season, I still am finding spots in this resort that I've never skied, that I haven't seen. And it's so true. Even looking at with the eyes of a mother now, of two little kids, I look at Bucky's backyard in a totally new way, with absolute excitement for when I get to take my kids in there. Or I look at success. The first time I'll do a green, or I really think that the first black diamond I'll take my kids down is Stein's Way. So that run has so much more meaning to me and anticipation. And that's the fun thing about the sport, is that it's lifelong. And looking at you, you are very unique, because most people that are skiers come from a legacy, so to speak, where their grandparents skied, their parents skied, it was family trips. Even if you lived in a place that had no mountains, like I came out west as a kid to Colorado, but no one in your family skied. What was it about skiing? Did you see it on television? Was it something you drove by a small ski area in Pennsylvania that you said, I'm gonna do that, that prompted you as a young adult to pack up your bags and head to the Rockies?
Yeah, I think the catalyst for coming west was a ride on a train car. So this is gonna sound a little odd, but my father is in the railroad, and my first job out of college was on a 14-person passenger car on a westbound train. So this was my introduction to the Rockies and the Western states. So it was from the train window. So I was just kind of observing out the window all these mountains and deserts, and I was like, I want to do that. I don't know what I'm gonna do, but I want to do that. So after coming home to Pennsylvania, talked to some friends. They had a connect at Winter Park. I didn't know how to ski. It didn't matter. I loaded up my Honda Accord. And
mountain car.
Yeah, right. And went west. And I think I'd always been curious about skiing. I mean, it's so cool. It's so cool. It's kind of up there with surfing for me, where it has this mystique. The culture is so unique. So I just decided, no one in my family had done it before. I was going to be the weirdo to do it. And yeah, I spent like $100 on skis, boots, poles, jacket from the thrift store, and just full send. Yeah,
You made it happen.
I made it happen. I mean, it wasn't pretty. The first winter was pretty hilarious, but I'm glad I was a late learner, because now I have such empathy for people who are learning later in life. But I also see how special it is to have little kids and start them early. So I appreciate all of it, but skiing has been something that is all my own. No one put skis on me when I was a kid. It was something that I kind of fought tooth and nail and struggled for. And so to have it be completely my own and a part of my identity that I now just really love is pretty cool.
I applaud you. There are so few people, let alone from the view of a train, which is so poetic, like you need to write a book or someone needs to make a movie about that see something that is so outside of their experience and say, I want that, and actually go after it. I think so many people are reticent and think, someday I'll do that. But there's no better day than today. And especially as young as you were, you're like, gosh, I got no ties, I'm heading out. And you're right, it's totally yours. If you ever become a mom or a grandmother, you're gonna be like your grandmother, where your grandkids are gonna say, Grandma Anna, she was amazing. She was totally her own person. And I think that is something that is really like the American spirit. Like, I think that if someone asked me like what sets the United States away, sets us apart from other places, are people like you that are complete individuals. And like you said, not many people would be like, oh, art, that's what I'm gonna dedicate my life to. But you have, and you're making it happen. And I think that that's so cool. And the fact that like you've brought skiing in, I think that that's amazing. And then what's incredibly cool is that you're paying it forward with your artwork, like through these chairlifts that are around Deer Valley, people that this might be the trip that they look forward to the entire year. And they're gonna see something that you created really for them, even though you'll never meet them, you don't know exactly what they're thinking or seeing when they look, because you're right, the light changes, the people change, but that reciprocity in artwork, I think that sometimes people lose that, but you're such a generous artist where you actually think about that when you create your artwork. The fact that you landed in Park City isn't a mistake. It's such a rich culture of art, and you have definitely connected with them. And even with the Burns project, with these different chairlifts, there were, I believe, 4 other local artists. Did you guys talk to each other? How much do you sort of bounce ideas of other artists with that project, but also just in general in the area?
Well, first of all, you guys picked a great batch of artists for the Burns Chair Reimagined. In a small community like Park City, it's easy to know a lot of the local artists. So I've had the pleasure of being friends and working with most of the artists you guys selected. And as far as bouncing ideas off, we kind of kept our ideas to ourselves, which was great because it kept everyone's project really individual to who they are. But it was really fun. I was able to share kind of a studio space where they have the snow cats and do lift maintenance. We got to decorate our chairs in that space. So it was really fun to paint alongside with Jess and Abby and Phil and Lamont. So yeah, just kind of supporting each other, I think, is the bedrock of the local arts community here, because Park City is a tricky town, you know? It's a pretty high cost of living. So to be an artist here, you don't want to be a starving artist. So I think the more we can support each other, it's just better. And also, I just love how each artist brought themselves to the project. Like Jess, who is a ski patroller here at Deer Valley for a number of years, I'm sure she could paint the Deer Valley ridgeline with her eyes closed. And then Abby, who is now raising 2 little boys on the ski slopes here, she made sure to have her chairs be magical to the little skiers, you know, little interactive bits and animals that they can find. And Phil, who his portraits are just incredible, the way he's able to capture the likeness of Stein and other skiers. And then also Lamont, I love that his work in inclusion and diversity is mirrored in his chairs, especially in skiing. I think it's just such a poignant and important place to keep people included. So I just love them all. Yeah.
I sort of put you on the spot hoping that you had relationships with these artists, but clearly you have rich friendship with many of them and really respect their artwork, which I love. You guys shared a whole studio space, which is so cool. What are the challenges of painting a chairlift? And also, did you ever feel like there was someone looking over your shoulder as you were doing things, or was it kind of a collective energy of creation?
Yeah, definitely collective creation. But yeah, the chairlift had some challenges. I think one being, it's not a medium I typically work with, which is a metal kind of powder coated thing to paint. It's not porous like a canvas, so you have to be pretty selective with what you paint on it, especially since it's outside and it's going to be in the elements year round. So it was, you know, a lot of searching on types of paint, and we were also really helpful to each other of, you know, hey, I found this method. Hey, I found this kind of automotive primer that we can use. So we did share ideas, not necessarily conceptual, but for the actual nuts and bolts of how the heck do you paint a chairlift? We really helped each other out. So that was pretty fun.
You guys shared a whole studio space, which is so cool. You said your studio was the maintenance building? I just don't, ski cats going by as you're creating weighty artwork. How did that work?
Yeah, it was a really funny juxtaposition of, you know, I would show up in my like pink puffy coat and I'm just there painting a bluebird while these lift ops guys are, you know, making sure the lifts run. And I'm just really grateful that they shared their space. They did not have to do that, and they were so gracious. And whenever I ran into an issue, they were always there to help me. So just huge shout out to them, and thank you for sharing the space and helping all us artists when we were a little helpless sometimes.
Totally, and I think they should take a little ownership via osmosis that a little bit of their hard work was injected into your guys' artwork, whether you knew it or not.
Mm-hmm.
Did anything that you learned from painting your Burns chairlift lend itself to future brainstorms? Because you said right now is your incubation period. Mm-hmm. What future projects are you excited about, and kind of what you've learned in this last, you know, calendar year that you're going to take forward?
Yeah, I think this past year was one of a lot of growth The Burns chair was my first kind of three-dimensional public outdoor art piece. I also did my first large-scale mural this past year. And both of those projects really taught me that you can do it. You may not have a lot of experience doing it, but you can figure it out as you go, and the community's there to support you. So this year, I'm really excited to apply to some other public art grants and to go bigger than I'm comfortable with. But also in creating some smaller bodies of work that feel really like intimate and more in my lane. So yeah, this year I'm just gonna cast a wide net. Hopefully some good things come back to me.
And then as a skier, because I can see that lights you up, nothing gives me more joy than seeing someone truly inspired. And I see that when you talk about art and about your little skiing endeavors. What are your sort of ski goals or sort of objectives for the rest of the season?
Yes. Ski objective is to ski a lot, snow willing. I also like to have a balance of social skiing and solo skiing. For me, solo days are what fills my cup, but it is really fun to share the mountain when people come to visit. So I have some friends coming this winter, and I'm really excited to show them around and kind of share my home with them. But
maybe share your chairlift artwork with
definitely.
them?
Yeah, definitely going to show them the chairlift.
You have to have some pride with that.
Absolutely.
I think, and you should own it too.
Yes.
I think that especially women in particular, we have to sort of be like, I did this. You should be like, look what I created.
So this is the reason why you came to visit me, was to see my chair.
Exactly. Take a picture. Frame-worthy, I think. Hashtag frame-worthy. And then kind of to finish things up, we touched upon it a little bit in that you have to continue to be inspired. And that doesn't seem to be a struggle for you at all. But what is it? What is the magic of the mountains to you personally?
I think the magic of the mountains is always there. It's just we have to slow down enough to notice it. And sometimes it's hard to maybe look up from your phone or look up from the to-do list you had that day. Creativity doesn't fit on the to-do list very nicely. It takes actually slowing down and noticing, being outside long enough to absorb what the magic of the mountain's trying to give you. So yeah, it is a little tricky as an artist because I have to prioritize playing outside, which feels counterproductive sometimes and doesn't have an hourly rate attached to it. But it always is worth it to take time to get outside, have some solo time in the mountains, and just slow down.
Thank you, Anna, so much for reminding us of the majesty of the mountains and to take time out of our busy lives to embrace creativity. And thank you for listening. This has been OverHerd at Deer Valley, and we'll see you on the slopes. And by the way, you guys are so cute on Instagram. Because I was just to prep for this. You can keep rolling if you guys want. To prep for this, I was scrolling through because I thought you were from the East Coast, but then I went to your website and that let me know you're from Pennsylvania. Podcast hosts, total creepers, by the way. Next time you're on a podcast, you'll be like, they know a lot about me.
Yeah.
Anyway, but I looked down and that you guys have been together for 8 years and you're 8. Also, people should know Anna's a poet, full-on poet. We don't need to get political, but she's done some things about women's healthcare that I think are absolutely beautiful and kind of eviscerating as they should be. And it was amazing.
Thank you.
That won't make the podcast either, but it's so good. Yeah. I was so impressed by your writing. You need to continue writing. You really do. Okay. In conjunction with your painting or even completely separate, you have a really unique voice. And also the way that you craft your words is synonymous with how you paint. It's beautiful and free-flowing but tells a story, it means something. I can tell for you when it comes to your artwork, whether it's with prose or paint, meaning's so important to you. And that really is so important in this day and age. We need more Anna Moores in the world.
Oh, thank you. That's very sweet.
Anna recently, reflecting to the best weather conditions to have at Deer Valley? I almost had it.
Place the cup nicely.
Yeah.
Okay,
For continuity. All right, here we go. You do backcountry lap. You're alpine, right? Or telly? Do you telly?
I have tallied.
You freed the heel?
I have had a free heel.
Did it free your mind?
Yes. No, mostly alpine, but I'm also a Nordork. I love to ski.
Oh, I can see that about you.
Yeah.
You're fit. You're cute. You like, right before you came here, you were a fitness instructor?
Yeah, I taught a boot camp class before coming here.
That's impressive.
Hence my voice being a little hoarse.
No, it sounds good. Raspy, did you watch Friends with Smelly Cat?
Yeah.
The raspiness is what you want. Actually, I did something a while ago and I completely lost my voice, and 2 days later, it was so deep and raspy. My husband was even like, you sounded really good doing that. You should try that more often. I'm like,
But it hurts.
I was like, I couldn't speak the day before. And, well, let's keep it light. Deer Valley, yay!